At the Nashville, Tennessee Woodcraft store, there's an employee named Bill Lester. Bill is a very gifted luthier who happens to specialize in banjos. I'm in town, so I'm going to spend some time with him learning how banjos are made and also learn how to do some steam bending. That is awesome. And you made that.
I did. Sure did.
How did you get into making banjos?
Well, my granddad played the banjo. I love my granddad. I just loved listening to him play the banjo. But he had an old, probably 100-year-old banjo that was real simple. And I'd seen a master tone at the local music store, and I thought, now that's a banjo. And so I wanted to upgrade my granddad's banjo for him, So,
How old were you at that time?
I was around 14. Yeah,
14 years old.
Yeah.
And you wanted to make a banjo.
Yeah. I was always,
That's awesome.
So, I had to sit down and figure out a lot of difficulties like bending rims and fitting the neck to the rim. And it took a long time. It took about 3 years. And, before I even finished one, and he had passed away actually, and before I did, but I was so hooked to all of the different complexities involved in fitting wood together and bending wood that, and I love the banjo, that I thought, well, shoot, man, I'm just going to keep doing it, So,
You just kept at it?
Yeah.
Became
sure
master at it.
did. Well, yeah.
And it looks like we have some samples of the process of building a banjo.
Yep,
Can we step through that?
absolutely.
So what do we have here?
That is the rim. That's what I always start with.
Okay. And this is steam bend?
It is steam bent.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what's this?
That is the tone ring. That's going to go on top of the rim. And the tone ring's typically a real dense wood that has good acoustical properties that will help amplify the sound. And it's a segmented rim, so it's going to be turned after it's put on the rim.
Okay, so that's sort of in a glue up state right now.
Yeah.
And we have here something that really represents a banjo.
Yeah, we've attached the neck in
Okay.
a temporary fashion, but it is attached using the dowel stick. The dowel stick basically is inserted into the neck, and it goes through the neck and secures the rim to the neck. This is a temporary dowel stick, but it'll have a bracket, it'll have a ferrule on there, and it really holds it snug.
And this is where it all starts, right?
It does.
We're going to steam bend a rim today?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's super cool. Can we do it?
Let's do it.
All right. So we're here at the steam bending area.
Yep.
So it looks like we've got some strips here.
Yep.
We got a steam box here. So tell me what's going on.
Well, the strips that are in there have been steaming for about an hour now. The steam is generated by a simple wallpaper steamer, and the strips, they're going to be steamed. The fibers are going to soften up, and they're going to become pliable enough to bend into an 11-inch diameter, basically.
That's what's going to allow us to actually form the wood and retain the shape.
Yep.
And this is basically what you would start with?
That's what you start with.
Okay.
That's what you start with.
So how is this prepped for making a rim?
Well, the main thing in prepping the wood is selecting the wood, selecting wood that has good straight grain.
Okay.
You don't want any runouts or any knots or wormholes or anomalies that might cause a problem when you start to bend it, because it'll break, and they do.
Okay.
They break occasionally.
All right. And is there a certain thickness that you're going for?
Well, the rim itself is a 3-ply rim, which is kind of traditional. And so I use approximately 1/4 inch thick, three 1/4 inch thick plies.
Okay.
And
So your walls are right around 3/4 when you're done?
Yeah, about 3/4 of an inch, 5/8, 3/4. Now I'm going to turn that down, the rim down on the lathe. So, the finished diameter is not what's going to be coming out of there. I've got to turn it down to diameter after that.
Right. Okay. And species-wise, is there a concern about staying away from certain species, or can we use kiln-dried wood, or?
Yeah. Now, I've used practically all the domestic species. I really haven't had a problem with steaming anything. Some of the species like hickory and osage, they may be a little harder to bend. Cherries like butter, when you bend it. It's really nice. As far as kiln dried goes, at a 1/4 inch thick, kiln dry is fine, but I would pre-soak it.
Okay.
And I do that anyway, just to get as much moisture back into the fibers prior to steaming it.
So if it's kiln dried, you don't want to cut it and put it right in the steam box.
Yeah,
It's better to
I'd
pre-soak
soak
it.
it definitely. Yeah.
Gotcha. And these look like they've been prepped with scarf joints.
They are. These are each. There's 3 of them, so they have each been cut to size based on their relative position within the diameter of the circle itself. But they've had 3 inches added onto their length, so that 3 inches is so that I can create a scarf joint, so they have a good binding surface when they're laminated together.
Very, very cool. All right, man. Well, let's see how it's done.
Okay. Get that out of the way. And this is the bending form right here. Just a simple block of wheel with a notch cut into it. So I'm going to take a piece of wood out and I'm going to put it in that notch and we're just going to roll it up.
So you're gonna put it right in the notch, and then just roll it right along here.
Yep.
And you're gonna use spring clamps along the way.
Yes. Particularly for the first bend because it's going to want to kind of slip out of there. And now this looks like a piece of cherry. Put this thing in here. Store it back on. And I'm going to apply constant downward pressure on basically the fulcrum, as opposed to off-center pressure, because that helps compress the wood as I roll it. Makes it easier to bend. I'm just going to keep that pressure on it.
It looks like leather.
Yeah, and that's how it feels, like real stiff leather as you're rolling it. So at this point, I'm going to put a strap on it so I can take it off this form.
Okay.
Because I don't necessarily want that indentation to be transformed into that. So, sorry about that. Taking those off. So I'm going to get a little strap.
Now, can you overcook or oversteam the wood?
I imagine you can, but I haven't done that yet. I typically steam these for about an hour, and that seems to be enough.
And that's a 1/4 inch thick.
That's a 1/4 inch thick.
Okay.
So we get that strap on there, and I'll put a little stick under here, and that's going to keep it. That's going to keep this strap from cracking that thin grain where the scarf joint is.
Okay.
And then, so you're just going to tighten that down. It's going to pull it in tight. It's not pulling it in all the way. That's okay. It'll be corrected when we put it into the laminating form.
So this doesn't need to be all the way over.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
This is actually undersized. That's 11 inches. This is only about 10.5 inches here.
Okay.
But the pressure exerted by the cauls in the laminating form are going to eliminate any sort of irregularities.
And how do we know when this is dry enough to pull the center form out?
Well, we can pull the center form out now.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just leave the band on?
Just leave the band on. And then you get a lot more air circulation around the wood, and the wood's going to dry in no time.
Really?
It'll be. I usually leave the straps on there at least overnight. It puts a good set into the wood.
Okay.
So when you take the bands off, they'll spring back a little bit, but not too bad.
All right. And you have a couple rings that are already dry and ready for the next step of the process.
Yep.
Let's do that.
All righty.
So this piece here looks pretty complicated. I mean, you've got a base and you've got an insert and there's a square hole in the middle and rubber lined.
Yeah.
What's this used for?
This is for laminating the rims.
Okay.
And it's a kind of heavy construction. It all comes apart, which is important because when we glue up 3 rims in there, those rims are going to lock this thing in place. And I'd never be able to get the rims out of here if I wasn't able to take it apart. The what you see, I have a base. This is on a base.
Okay.
And there's a silicone rubber sheet on the base, and there's rubber lined around the inside of the form. Now, the rubber gets waxed so that the glue won't stick. But the rubber on the inside of the forms is important because that helps distribute the pressure. As we use rubber on the inside of the cauls when we hammer them in there. So the rubber helps distribute the pressure, and you can wax it easily, and the wood and the glue will release from it fairly easily. The hole in the center is so that when we drive that wedge in, it's going to be able to go as far as it needs to.
And push pressure out.
Push the pressure on the
these are
cauls.
the cauls that you're referring to. There's 4 of these.
Those are they're 4 of them.
And they lock in here once the rims are set, right?
Mm-hmm.
The individual pieces.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
Well, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Can we dry fit one?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've got some bent and dry rims, and you can see when we take them off of the straps, they retain their shape.
Yeah.
A little spring back, but not much. And we just insert the rim into the form. This is walnut, so it's kind of easy to work with. If it was hickory or osage, it'd be a little more of a challenge.
And you're really just sort of spreading it out, making sure it's expanded as far as it can be?
Yep.
Okay.
And it'll spring out to the maximum it can within that form itself. So
Once the pressure's applied?
yeah, and then once the pressure's applied, then it's going to, finish it off.
And if this was glue, if we're going to glue it up, what would the steps be right now? You'd apply glue to the inside of the outside?
Yeah, we apply glue on our lap joint here, and on the outside rim, we'd apply glue to the inside.
Okay.
On the rim that's going on the inside, we apply glue to the outside.
What kind of glue are you using?
I use a slow set glue. It's a tight bond product, but I want as much working time as possible. And the glue helps to lubricate the strips so that when I drive that wedge in there, it'll slip and slide a little easier.
Sure.
So this is the rim. The rims are 3 pieces, but I do. It takes 2 days to do a rim because I only do one piece at a time.
So when you do a glue up, you don't put all 3 of them in at the same time?
I don't.
Okay. Is there a reason why? Or?
Yeah, because it makes it just that much more difficult. It's easier to apply pressure when you only are trying to laminate 2 things together. You put a 3rd piece in there, and you don't have as much success in eliminating all the cracks and voids.
I got you. And I noticed you offset your scarf joint.
I do, yeah. That's for strength, and each will be offset kind of clockwise around the form. So
About a quarter?
yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, you don't want a scarf joint right on a scarf joint. That's a weak spot. you know.
Sure.
So we've got them in there, and the cauls, again, we're going to use some rubber. This is going to be waxed. It serves the same purpose. It helps to distribute the pressure.
Okay.
And so basically we're going to put that in there. I'm going to fit one of those in there. And these are numbered. There is a pattern. Since they are kind of hand sewn, they're all just a little bit different.
And what kind of wax are you using on this?
It's just a cheap paste wax.
Yeah.
Just no kind of fancy wax, just the cheapest you can get. It's just it's just for making sure it doesn't stick, And get that thing in there. So the cauls are in there real nice. Now I have these dowels. The dowels are going to fit down into here. They are to help keep the cauls aligned, because when you start hammering this in there, they could go any which way. And but we'll start off. So basically, we're just going to kind of put our wedge wedge in there, and we we don't necessarily need to put these in yet. We may not need to put them in at all. But the wedges made out of hard maple. This is a sacrificial cap. So
okay.
I want to protect this. I don't care about this because I can replace it as many times as I need to. So this is going to get all beat up eventually. I'll cut it off and put a new cap on there, and that protects the wedge itself.
How far down do you have to drive this?
Well, I'm going to drive it down as far as I can. So I'm going to put maximum pressure. It just depends on how much room I'm taking up, basically. Sometimes, when I get that third piece in there, I may not be able to drive it down very much at all. Right now, since it's just two pieces, I can probably drive it down pretty far.
Yeah. And there's no concern about putting too much pressure on it? Like, when you're doing a glue up on a cabinet or something like that, some people say, you got to be careful about it.
Yeah, don't starve the joint, basically.
Right.
No. I've never had a rim. There's more of a problem of not putting enough pressure on it because it's round and it doesn't want to play nice and if you don't have a lot of pressure, you may have a gap. You don't want a gap in the rim. That's a dead spot for the sound.
Okay.
And even when you do hammer it down all the way, you still may have a gap. But the idea is get it as tight as possible.
All right.
Yeah. So, you want to try it?
No. I'll watch you. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to damage anything.
Oh no, you can't damage anything here. So, all righty. So you're just gonna go at it,
Man,
And
you're really putting a swing into it.
yeah. So
I see what you mean here. Like,
yeah. So what this tells me is that I should have put an extra layer of rubber in there because these gaps are a little bit wide for right now. Okay. But it actually did the trick. When I always do a dry fit because I want to examine it. I want to look and see if I see any gaps, And if I can see a gap, then I've got to take up more space. Do something like this.
And these massive gaps here.
Yeah. So normally, these gaps are a little bigger than I like them to be.
Okay.
Ideally, these little spacers should be hammered in. Well, obviously, I don't need to hammer these in because there's too much gap in there.
I got you.
But you can see that it did a good job, and having this thing in multiple parts, being able to disassemble it, then I can take it. Sometimes it gets locked in there, but I can basically take it out of its form and examine the back as well before I continue on to make sure I don't have any gaps here. So right now I'm seeing a gap right there, Okay. So what I'd probably do, this being a dry run, I'd come back when I put the glue on there. I'm just going to add another little layer to take up some of the space.
Reduce the diameter.
And give a little more pressure in there, And again, you're seeing a gap there, but if you have the glue on there, it's actually going to slide a lot easier, and it would probably eliminate that gap eventually.
Oh, right.
So that's how we glue them up.
And if the gap is there, would you just drive the edge further down? Or would the glue probably eliminate all that, you said?
I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to drive it further down. If there's a gap, quite often that gap is superficial. It's only at the top or the bottom. Right. And when I reduce the thickness, because this is 2 3/4 thick. The final product's not 2 3/4. It's more like a 1 3/4. So I'll use a parting tool on a lathe, cut it off, and that gap very often does not extend past just a fraction of an inch or two from the surface.
I got you.
But if it does, then I may scrap it. It just depends on if I want to try to process it in a different way. But
Man, this was a really interesting process, and it's not incredibly complicated. It doesn't look. There's just a lot of steps and a lot of patience to it.
That's right. There's nothing complicated about any of this. It's just kind of logistics, putting it together in in the series it needs to be.
Sure. Well, I can't wait to get home and see if I can bend something up.
Yeah, man.
I might be calling you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.